Once it defined British luxury. Today, even loyal fans aren't sure what Burberry stands for. Burberry used to be the easiest answer to a simple question. What does British luxury look like? You knew the trench, you knew the check. You didn't have to be into fashion to recognize it. For a long time, Burberry was more than a logo. It was a whole idea of Britain: trenches, overcast skies, polished coats. A kind of quiet status you didn't have to shout about. Even when the check spiraled into overexposure and chav headlines, the brand did something impressive. It cleaned up its image, embraced technology, and came back as a serious luxury player. But right now, that story doesn't feel like a comeback anymore. It feels like a second fall. Sales are down double digits. The company has been kicked out of the FTSE 100. It's cutting jobs, discounting heavily in key markets, and changing direction so often that even people who love the brand aren't sure what it wants to be. So how do you go from one of the strongest names in fashion to a label people feel sorry for? And is this just another rough patch? Or has Burberry become the latest cautionary tale of a brand that forgot what made it iconic? To understand how bad things look now, we have to go back to when Burberry still felt bulletproof. The story doesn't start on Bond Street or at Fashion Week. It starts in Basingstoke in 1856, with a 21-year-old draper named Thomas Burberry who was obsessed with one problem: the weather. He wasn't trying to make a status symbol. He was trying to make clothes that could survive the kind of cold, wet, miserable British days that ruin everything. That obsession led him to something quietly radical for the time: gabardine. A tightly woven, breathable, water-resistant fabric that didn't feel like armor. It was practical, simple, and it changed the trajectory of the brand before brand was even a concept. And from that point on, Burberry grew in places most fashion houses never reach. Gabardine ended up on explorers pushing into Antarctica, on early aviators crossing dangerous skies, and eventually on soldiers during World War I. That's where the trench coat was born, built around utility, not glamour. Every detail, the storm flap, the belt, the epaulettes, had a job. No runway ambitions, no marketing narrative. Just a coat that worked so well it outlived its original purpose. This is the part people forget today. Burberry didn't become iconic because it chased luxury. It became iconic because people trusted it. Trust became heritage. Heritage became prestige. And without even trying, Burberry found itself becoming shorthand for a certain British ideal: resilience, order, and elegance that didn't need to announce itself. By the mid-20th century, Burberry had become a cultural institution. Royal warrants from Queen Elizabeth II and the Prince of Wales formalized what people already knew. If you wanted the best of British outerwear, this was it. The trench appeared on movie stars, aristocrats, politicians, and eventually on anyone who wanted a taste of understated refinement. When the Nova check pattern, first used as lining in the 1920s, became a standalone product in 1967, it was never meant to be a global signal. But that's exactly what it became. A flash of beige, black, red, and white that hinted at money without ever having to spell it out. As the decades passed, Burberry expanded beyond Britain, Paris, New York, Buenos Aires, exporting not just coats, but a whole aesthetic. Clean, composed, weather-ready elegance. Even as fashion changed around it, Burberry kept something steady at its core. A sense that this was a brand you grew into. The kind you bought once and kept for life. But inside all that global success, tiny fractures were already forming. The demand for the check grew faster than the brand could protect it. Licensing deals multiplied. Factories far from London began producing everything from umbrellas to dog collars stamped with the pattern. And slowly, a symbol meant to represent quiet heritage started spreading into places Burberry never intended it to be. Nobody realized it at the time, but the seeds of the first fall were already planted, hidden inside the very popularity that had once made the brand feel unstoppable. The moment the check left Burberry's control, the entire brand began drifting into a place it never meant to go. What started as a subtle lining something only insiders noticed, suddenly became the main attraction. And the more people wanted it, the harder it became for Burberry to protect it. By the late 1990s, the check wasn't just on trenches and scarves anymore. It was everywhere. Caps, bags, cheap accessories, licensed goods pumped out in every direction. And when a patent spreads faster than the story behind it, it stops being a symbol of heritage and becomes something else entirely. That something else arrived fast. In the early 2000s, the check became tied to a very specific British subculture. The tabloid's favorite target, chav culture. The association spiraled overnight. Newspapers mocked it, clubs banned it, and Burberry went from a symbol of quiet wealth to the uniform of rowdy football crowds and tabloid caricatures. And then came the moment that defined the entire crisis. Actor Daniela Westbrook photographed head-to-toe in Burberry check, with her child and even a matching stroller covered in the same pattern. One image, and suddenly the check wasn't aspirational anymore. It was a punchline. The brand's prestige collapsed almost instantly. You couldn't sell a trench coat to a luxury client when the pattern on the lining had become shorthand for tackiness. Burberry didn't just lose control, it lost cultural credibility. And with 99% of check-patterned goods in circulation estimated to be counterfeit, the brand had effectively become a luxury label that had been knocked out of luxury. Most companies never recover from that kind of image crisis, but Burberry did, and the comeback was almost as dramatic as the fall. When Angela Ahrendts stepped in as CEO in 2006, paired with creative director Ahrendts-Bailey, they approached the problem like surgeons. The check wasn't banned, but it was quietly pulled out of the spotlight. Licensing deals were cut. Cheap production was scaled back. Stores were redesigned. Campaigns shifted toward a cleaner, sleeker, modern British identity. And then came the move that changed the company's entire trajectory. Burberry went digital. Before every other luxury house. While competitors still relied on magazine ads and seasonal campaigns, Burberry live-streamed shows, built online experiences, and treated digital as part of the brand, not an afterthought. The Art of the Trench project turned everyday people wearing Burberry into a global visual archive. Suddenly, the brand didn't look dated anymore. It looked innovative. Add in strong collections, celebrity support, and a renewed focus on the trench. And Burberry became something rare in fashion, a brand that had crashed, been mocked, and then rebuilt itself into a modern powerhouse. The numbers reflected it. Sales rose. Prestige returned. Fashion editors praised the turnaround as a case study in brand rehabilitation. For a moment, Burberry felt not just recovered, but unstoppable. What nobody saw was that the success of this comeback carried a quiet risk of its own. Because when a brand builds a strategy around a single creative vision, what happens when that vision starts to crack? Burberry's comeback under Angela Ahrendts and Ahrendts-Bailey worked almost too well. The brand had gone from embarrassment to example, a case study in how to rebuild prestige in the modern luxury market. But that success created a new kind of vulnerability. Burberry was now built around one vision, one aesthetic, one leadership duo. And the moment that structure shifted, the cracks began to show. The first shift came quietly. Bailey wasn't just the creative director anymore. He was suddenly the CEO, too. On paper, it sounded visionary. The artist finally had full control. But fashion and business rarely move in the same rhythm. Bailey was brilliant at creating atmosphere and storytelling, but the global luxury market was moving into one of its most competitive eras. As trends sped up and consumer expectations changed, Burberry needed sharper strategy, not just sharper runways. It didn't take long for pressure to build. Sales slowed. Investors grew restless. And by 2017, Marco Gabardine was brought in to take over as CEO, marking the beginning of a new experiment, one built around a completely different creative direction. Gabardine's big move came quickly. He hired Riccardo Tisci. Tisci had transformed Givenchy with streetwear, bold branding, and a darker, more urban edge. Burberry hoped he could replicate that magic in Britain. But the fit was never quite right. Burberry's identity had always relied on subtlety, quiet confidence, polished restraint, an understated trench on an overcast day. Tisci's work ran on loud logos, sharper silhouettes, and a global streetwear sensibility. The tension was obvious from the start. Longtime Burberry customers didn't recognize the brand anymore, and the younger audience Burberry hoped to attract didn't see it as a leader in street culture. The collections weren't disasters. They were just disconnected from the story Burberry had spent more than a century telling. Then came the logo change. A stark, bold, sans-serif Burberry, designed with Peter Saville. It was meant to symbolize a fresh era, a reset, a jump into modernity. But to many people, it felt like the brand was shedding its personality instead of updating it. The trench stayed iconic, but the brand around it began to feel strangely generic, like it was chasing a trend instead of setting one. And while all this was happening creatively, the business side was cracking too. Burberry tried to push further up the luxury ladder with higher price points and more exclusive positioning, but it didn't offer the storytelling or craftsmanship depth of brands like Hermès or Chanel. At the same time, it didn't have the hype factor of a Gucci or Vuitton. Instead of owning a lane, Burberry ended up floating between them. Too expensive for the aspirational shopper, not exclusive enough for the ultra-luxury client, and not cool enough for the trend-driven crowd. And then came the discounts. In key markets, especially China, Burberry began lowering prices, sometimes by as much as 40 to 50%. In luxury, discounting isn't just a tactic, it's a signal. And this signal was loud. The brand isn't selling. Once discounts begin, brand equity starts draining fast. Shoppers wait for deals, loyal clients feel betrayed, and the identity of the brand, already fragile, becomes even more blurred. Leadership changes continued. Strategies shifted. Each new vision contradicted the one before it. Tisci's era ended, Gabardine left, and the brand entered another phase of instability, just as the global luxury slowdown began tightening pressure across the entire industry. By the early 2020s, Burberry wasn't struggling because of one bad collection or one wrong CEO. It was struggling because it had lost the clarity that once made it feel inevitable. A brand built on certainty now felt uncertain at every level. So when Marco Gobbetti and Riccardo Tisci exited, the board didn't just replace them. They reset the entire strategy. This time, the mandate was simple: stop experimenting and rebuild a point of view. Daniel Lee stepped in as creative director, and Joshua Schulman arrived as CEO with a reputation for discipline and turnaround work. On paper, the pairing made sense. Lee knew how to create cultural heat. He'd already done it at Bottega, and Schulman understood how to steady a brand that had drifted off course. Burberry didn't need reinvention anymore. It needed coherence, authority, and a reason for customers to believe again. Lee's first collections made that intent clear. The trench came back to the center, the check returned, but in deeper greens and richer tones. The styling felt more British, more grounded, more aligned with what people used to love about Burberry. It wasn't a full revival, but it was a step toward coherence after years of confusion. But the scale of the decline became impossible to ignore in 2025. Sales were down 12%. Operating profit collapsed from £418 million to just £26 million. Burberry officially lost its place in the FTSE 100. And under the new Burberry Forward restructuring, the company announced nearly 1,700 job cuts. One of the largest workforce reductions in its modern history. These weren't cosmetic signals. They were signs of a brand under real stress, trying to stabilize after years of unclear positioning. The problem is that fashion doesn't exist in a vacuum. Burberry sits in a shrinking middle, too expensive for aspirational shoppers, not exclusive enough to compete with true luxury houses. Attempts to move further upmarket never fully convinced customers, and the elevated pricing strategy backfired at a moment when the luxury market itself was tightening. Analysts pointed out that Burberry's most iconic product, the trench coat, is a lifetime purchase, not a seasonal one. You don't sell exclusivity through items people only need once. So now everything rests on Schulman and Lee. They have the heritage, the recognizability, and early hints of a more focused identity. But the window to act is smaller than ever. The brand is still culturally relevant. It just isn't leading the conversation. And that leaves one final question hanging over the entire company. Is this the beginning of a real recovery? Or the tragic second fall of a brand that forgot what made it iconic in the first place? Curious to hear your thoughts on this. Thank you for watching, and as always, see you in the next one.